Here's a model of the other growth we had at the end. Remember how the marriage of earth and ether grew? Well, this shape has one of these in the middle of it, okay? And wrapped around the outside of it, it's got one of those. And this always reminds me of the Borg in Star Trek, this one. But this one, all of these shapes were made in Bali at a place called Stargate. And when we were introduced to them all, it was in a ceremonial context, because we weren't only testing people's circuits, we were then doing ceremony with the shapes to reconnect those circuits permanently in people. And if I'm an example of anything, I'm an example of what happens when you have your electromagnetic geometric circuits reconnected, because I had no interest in geometry at all until they did that to me. So they're called the template ceremonies, and they made all this stuff, and every single one of them has a different ceremonial application, which slowly but surely re-establish your electromagnetic integrity. And this shape should be really, really singing out to all of you, because it's the shape of what we call the star of immortality. If you put points on it, and we've got one at home, I haven't got it with me, then it looks like this really amazing star, and the two shapes between them kind of really do sing to the long forgotten part of the human that doesn't die. It's an illusion that we're kind of giving rebirth to this horror and horror time and time again. It's a beautiful shape though. Unfortunately, it's got no string attached to it, so you can't spin it. So that is an introduction to the basic shapes of geometry. I want to just look now at some of the odd things that nature does with all of this, and bits of hypergeometry and one or two other strange things. The first thing I want to look at is my little box of crystals. In here I've got a piece of iron pyrites. I'm going to hand this around, but when you look at it, you'll see it's got what's called a dodecahedral symmetry. It looks really just like one of these, except that it's not perfect. And my mate Mick the Moon, who did the slice through the 7th dimensional hypercube, he tells me that nature never does achieve a perfect 5-sided figure, that it only approximates to it, which gives us the clue to these things as templates. Probably they don't exist exactly in nature, because everything has to be slightly different from everything else. And this piece of iron pyrites has got lots of different sized, almost 5-sided shapes in it. Again, I'll hand it around. On the hologram, remember we said when we break the hologram it breaks into many bits of itself? Well, this is the same thing. If we threw this on the floor, it would have a tendency, not absolutely, but it would have a tendency to break into dodecahedral bits, into bits that are this shape, because it's actually got a holographic knowledge. Some crystals grow both. Some crystals actually do a cube as one generation and then an octahedron as the next. And before I started doing the geometry talk, I saw some of those crystals, but I didn't buy them. Since I've been doing the geometry talk, I haven't seen them, but I know they're out there. Iron pyrites doesn't only do dodecahedral symmetry, it also does cubes. This is not quite cubic, one side's slightly longer than the others, but I saw this piece come out of a big piece of iron pyrites that was more or less the same proportion as this, and it just popped out of the corner, this little shiny polished piece. It's got perfect 90-degree angles and stuff all the way around it, and that's exactly as it turned up. Nobody's polished it or anything. You might move those two together. Even more strangely, here's a really nice little one. This is, I'll keep this one here rather than hand it out because it's ever so small. I'll hand it out. Can you get that, Mr. Camera? It's an absolutely perfect octahedral rough garnet. I've seen shiny ones as well, so it's absolutely perfect, one of these, as it came out of the ground. One of my favourites, but not quite. I told you these were the only 18 shapes of creation. Well, I was sort of lying a little bit. You remember when we did the dots in the centre of the cube and we made one of these? Okay, well, to your huge horror, you will find out that if you put dots in the centre of all of the feminine ones, you get a completely new set of shapes that are called the Archimedean jewels. And they're really hard to come across, but I'm making a set. And one of my favourites was sort of Shape of the Year 2008. It was this one. And what it is an internal reflection of the cube octahedron, okay? You can see this one's made up of diamonds that are all the same size, but it really looks like 4 cubes somehow squashed into the space of 3. And many people I've given this shape to and they've gone, no, that can't be right. And you know, it's a bit like the TARDIS, you know, it kind of looks like it's probably bigger on the inside. But It's not the presence of the model that's most amazing. It's coloured green and yellow to show you that it grew out of the earth and air shape. So we're still dealing with those original three forms, really. The most amazing thing, though, is I have here another rough garnet, which is exactly the same shape as that. So somehow crystals know about Archimedean jewels. That's really amazing, I thought. I couldn't believe it, having made that and enjoyed it for so long, when somebody gave me one of these. Don't you just love synchronicity? The meaningful coincidence of mind and matter. That's what it's all about. So there's some more interesting shapes for you to consider. Well, some of those other Archimedean jewels, remember I said they're coloured to show you where they grow from. I'm not going to go through them all, but if you look at these two, you can see that this is the one that's green, so it's been grown from earth. It's actually a mirror of this. Okay, so it's a mirror of the most complicated cube-shaped form, and you can see that it's almost this shape. Yes? Can you see how it is becoming the other thing? Really important thing about relationships is that, you know, they don't become like you, or if they do, you become like them. Really beautiful, because the same thing is true of this one. This is the yellow one. So ultimately it was grown originally from this, and it's now 3 or 4 stages down the line, and it's starting to look very like a cube. Now the ancients understood that the fixed and the volatile translated themselves, that it wasn't that one existed and the other existed, it was that over time the fixed became volatile and the volatile became fixed, and we can see this actually happening live in the geometry in front of our faces. Again, really beautiful shapes, and I don't think you'll ever see these anywhere else, so enjoy that. I haven't quite made the full set yet, I got distracted. I want to have just a quick look at how things stack together. Remember when we talked about things constantly growing and us making space by having babies and all of that? I just want to have a look quickly at how things do share space with each other. If we have a quick look at this looks like something you haven't seen today, doesn't it? But if I hold it on its side, you can actually see that it's 2 star tetrahedrons stuck together. Can I have the star tetrahedron, sir? It's behind you. Can you pass it back? Pass it forward. No, it's all right. It is the one that you've got, but can you pass it forward to me? Thank you very much. Very good, Tart. Can everybody see that there's a couple of star tetrahedrons stuck to each other when I hold it up that way? If I actually add this one to it, it makes it even more obvious. So we've got a real beautiful matrix there. Now, one of the most amazing shapes we've looked at is this one, the first one that actually kind of melds these two shapes together. And we've seen how this is 2 star tetrahedrons, so there's 2 octahedrons in the middle of it, and we know that it looks like a cube when we looked at it from end on, and we know it's made out of triangles and triangles, so it's a really fancy shape. But if you look in the middle of it, you'll see that there's a square with a load of spokes going into the middle of the shape. And what this calls to mind is my favourite shape. This is a cube octahedron, so if you look, there's squares with a triangle round each edge, and then a square in the triangles. So what we've actually got is one of these, but with points going inwards. And that's exactly what there is in the heart of these 2 star tetrahedra. If I hold it up, you can see that this shape is actually held within those two. Again, I'll pass it round so that you can have a look. I really love that, because this turns out to be one of the brilliant keys to life, the cube octahedron. You remember when we looked at the vesica piscis, which is the circle centred on the edge of another circle. This is the first movement that Spirit made, and we talked about the flower of life with reference to the star tetrahedron and the Merkaba. What happens if you repeat this is that you get this particular shape, and you can see that in here there's circles centred on other circles, okay? So it is actually this repeated again and again, and what that yields is these extra little ellipses round things. The reason why this is an important shape is because it actually holds all of the shapes that we've looked at, and all of the stars and everything. All of the geometry is housed in the single points on this key. So it's like a flat key to all shapes. If you want to see how it works, there's a load of my artwork on slates back there, which is all for sale. There's little prices on the back, and I spend a lot of time painting this pattern and painting the stars into it. Some of them glow in the dark, but there's images over there which will show you how every other geometry is fitted into this. It's a real beautiful shape, and it wasn't seen in the world for ages and ages. It was here, but first of all, John Varlo Melchizedek was given a photograph of it, which somebody had taken inside a wall in Saqqara, or Dundara as it used to be called, and then it was found in China. And eventually we discovered that nearly all Islamic art, 80% of that amazing art you see in the Alhambra and stuff, has this as the key behind it. And the reason we didn't see it is that they use this as the key, not as the full-blown thing. And one of the lovely things about this is that it extends really beautifully into the third dimension. I want to just, the two-star tetrahedrons that we handed out with the cube octahedral hub in the middle,